people on the people dancing on the people. I got
Welcome to Deep Americana.
Today on Deep Americana, Josh will be interviewing Austin over what a healthy rivalry is, soccer, baseball, basketball, and the sports bubbles.
Welcome to Deep Americana. This is Josh, and I'm with Austin today. We're going to discuss sports. Austin, you're a soccer coach. You'd like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I started coaching soccer in high school. I came from a small town in Wisconsin. I was part of our first traveling soccer team growing up. Once I got to high school, the high school coach asked me, he's like, hey, can you help me out with this team a little bit? And that kind of got me started in the coaching realm. And then it just kind of progressed. I played all through high school, played a little bit in college, and then I had the opportunity to coach college program for a year. Did
Wow.
that.
That's impressive.
Yeah, so it was a Division III women's program that I got to coach on. And then I moved into the club scene. I went and got, I have 2 licenses currently. I have a USSF F license and then a USSF E license. I'm going to be working on my D license here, so it kind of goes in a layered system all the way up to A is the highest that you can get, which is like what a Jurgen Klinsmann or, all those top level coaches. Essentially, if you're in the U.S., you're going to have that A license and, head honcho type of guys,
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've been around the pitch a little bit,
Sounds like it. So you follow much soccer nationally and internationally in terms of big soccer clubs and whatnot?
Yeah, so I am a diehard Newcastle fan, unfortunately. But yeah, I've been following the Premier League for a long, long time. Started more recently to get into like the Bundesliga and some of those other European leagues just because of all the players. There's so much transferring going on from league
Absolutely.
to league. I can't say I watched a lot of domestic here in the U.S. MLS. It's a fun crack show to watch, but it's not my favorite type of soccer. I can say that.
No, I understand what you're saying. The Premier League is pretty special because they play at such a fast pace, and they're out for blood.
Yeah,
so
well,
to speak.
And it's that fast pace, but yet you can see the methodical side of it develop, and they do it so quickly. It's really impressive, and I love the relegation system. I think that is such a unique thing in sports. No other league really does something like that. Outside of soccer leagues, but I think that's a really unique part of it as well.
Absolutely. I really wish they would bring that into American sports. I think that would forever change, especially the way things are going now in different leagues here in America, whether it be the NBA or the NFL or any of them really. When teams they get to a point of the season where they know they're not going to do well, and they're out there for draft picks, and you can't do that, and you don't get to do that in England or any other country in that I'm aware of in Europe concerning soccer. That's just not something that you're the top or the bottom 3 or 4, you're out.
Yeah. It's. I feel like it just builds like a poor culture, or can build a poor culture, because then you get these teams, Cleveland Browns, Miami Dolphins, where they get these long stretches of, terrible years, and I feel terrible for the fans because, they're in the situation you just explained, where they're like, well, we're just playing for draft picks, I guess, and hope that they develop, right?
Yeah, it can go on for many seasons, and where you're just stuck in like this permanent cycle of rebuild where, you get a couple of decent players, but your team doesn't get out of the first round of the playoffs, or they don't even make the playoffs, so you're just like, okay, so we're going to tank for 2-3 more years, and then the cycle just repeats itself.
Yeah.
And I think, the small market teams can complain or whatever, because they don't get the TV money that the big market teams do, but it's like most leagues are still in salary cap circumstances. So.
Oh, yeah. You can look at a team like, and I'm being biased here because I'm a Green Bay Packers fan, but small market team, but years of, they had their bad years too, but years of success, and I don't know if that starts with just building good culture or what exactly, but it's an example of a small market team at least being able to produce on a pretty good scale.
Yeah, and Packers, I think, are kind of they're sort of special because they've been in the NFL since
Yes.
They had a year before they were in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I mean, it would have been. I think it's like 8 championships
Right.
prior to the NFL being split up into AFL or AFC, NFC.
Right. Because but they've done pretty well in Super Bowls for the most part as well. So.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean they have their issues here and there, but I mean it feels like they're kind of running into the same thing they did with Brett Favre with Aaron Rodgers, where they have best quarterback in the league by far, or at times he's definitely one of the most talented. But what happened is they with Brett Favre they went to 2 straight Super Bowls, and Aaron Rodgers has been to 1. And they've had great teams, and they've come very close in championship games in the past too, and not quite made it. And it happened with both of them. But it's just the NFL is a tough sport. I mean, it's tough to stay on top. It's tough to be on top. And
Absolutely. I think a lot it can get really lost in. To compete at that level, to get to a Super Bowl is so. It's any sport, to get to that championship is literally so difficult to do. And then to do it, multiple times. You look at those teams that have done it multiple times: the Warriors, Patriots, whoever you want to stop. That's more recent, but even throughout history, those teams. There's something special about them. A bunch of different factors go into it: great players, great coaching. Maybe they just have that X factor player. Maybe it is the culture in their locker room. Maybe it's innate ability. I don't know, but there's always something special about those teams when it comes to it.
The Packers had maybe the greatest dynasty of all time in the 50s and 60s,
Mm-hmm.
in the 60s at least. But that was the sport was very similar to what it is now, but in terms of money and all that, it's a whole new ball game.
Money, the training, the athletes that are coming out. I think you see it in the NFL, yes, but and you look at the NBA, you look at the athletes that are playing it now versus 50 years ago. It's almost crazy to think about to some degree.
It really is, because in the 60s, most of those guys still had second jobs and stuff like that. When they were in the off season, and these guys now, the way they get paid, they have to be on it 100%. Off season training, everything, studying from playbooks and whatnot. All that stuff has to be. They have to know what they're doing, or they're going to get cut.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So, who's your favorite basketball team?
So, being from Wisconsin, I am also a Milwaukee Bucks diehard fan, which up until recent years was also very unfortunate. Struggled through to give a little reference, I was born in 1994, so I'm relatively young. I lived through some of the Bucks' darker days of the late 90s, early 2000s, when really all we had, we wasted away and got rid of Ray Allen, which sucked.
Yeah.
And then, outside of that, our only other shining moments were Michael Redd, Brandon Knight for a little bit, and then a few other shining moments here and there. But that up until Giannis and this team that Mike Budenholzer has assembled recently, it has been a tough go, but I'm thankful to be where we are now.
Yeah, it looks like you guys have got a team together, although you lost game 1 today. I don't know if you're aware
I
of
saw that. It was 122 to 110 or something like that.
Yeah, I watched the fourth quarter of that game, and they just really didn't look like they were... They didn't look like they were really playing a playoff game, which is weird, because the Bucks have experience in the playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They've had some rough experience, but... It really felt like this was their year to break out, but it's just game 1, so we're not going to get...
That's true, and I saw some stuff online today too, saying last year's, let's see, it would have been because it was the Raptors last year that won it. No. Yeah, Raptors with Kawhi before Kawhi got traded over to the Clippers.
Right.
They lost to the Magic game 1 of their initial series. Not saying that's an indicator of what's to happen. But you never know. History may repeat itself in that sense. I'm hoping so, obviously. But no, yeah, the game today was less than enthusiastic from a team standpoint, no doubt. So I'll be curious to see how they can bounce back and see what they do. But what a unique season. Like, I mean, this bubble concept and the games being played is really strange.
It really is, and just we're not even 2 full days into the playoffs right now as we tape this, but a situation where like now we're in the playoffs and home court advantage is really
Mm-hmm.
it's a big deal in the NBA for a lot of teams, and it's not there. I mean, they're doing everything they can. They got the nice digital screens and all that with the virtual fans,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not. It's just not. It's obviously not the same, and they're doing it. They're doing the best they can with the situation, and I just read today that they're continuing. They're still COVID free now, and that's amazing under the circumstances, especially when you compare it to say baseball, where they're having all kinds of issues.
Seriously.
But they're traveling, and that's the difference. And,
Yeah.
And I think that they're more strict. I mean, I think they gave the baseball players like a whole a list of stuff they were supposed to do, like guidelines or whatever. But and I think for the most part, most guys are following it. But they don't have minders like they would, if they were in North Korea or something like that.
No, exactly. Well, I mean, like, the thing is, too, with that, it's like all it takes is just, those 1 or 2 guys that don't do it or who aren't, held to the same standard.
Yeah.
And then they're in the situation they're in now. As opposed, I mean, to the bubble, which, I mean, the NBA is fortunate enough that it's a sport that you can run something like that in that confined amount of space, right? I mean, I understand. I mean, coordinating that for baseball would just be, I mean, logistically, I don't know. I don't envy anyone in those types of positions to make those decisions because it is affecting a lot of lives as far as, jobs, not only the players, but you look at the workers at the stadiums, all of that. I mean, I know when COVID first started here in Denver, the Nuggets organization here said that they were going to pay the wages for all the missed games for all the workers of the stadium, which was a great gesture on their
I didn't
part.
know about that. But
Yeah.
that's really awesome.
So that was really cool to see that some of these teams stepping up, trying to do whatever they can to support the people that work for them and who have worked for them for years.
Absolutely, it's that's what I don't think people realize is or I shouldn't say people, but some people just don't realize how many people don't have jobs under the circumstances because of the situation, and it's just they're doing everything like you said. The Nuggets are paying them. That's great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'm sure a lot of organizations that can at least afford it are doing everything they can, but it's difficult.
Oh, absolutely. So, do you have a team that you're specifically cheering for here, NBA playoffs?
NBA playoffs, yes.
All right.
I'm rooting. I'm a hardcore Oklahoma City Thunder fan. If that's the thing, we've only been around since 2009 or whatever, and we've had a real rough go in the playoffs with a couple of one exception where we lost in the finals, and that team there were seasons where they were overperforming, and then it reached the point where they went from overperforming to underperforming, and now this is definitely a season of overperformance because no one really expected anything out of them.
Oh yeah. Okay. I have to ask then. Is that connection from? Were you a Sonics fan prior to the move to Oklahoma?
I'm born and raised in Oklahoma.
Okay,
so
well
we never had a real professional sports team aside from the Tulsa Roughnecks or whatever. They were in the NASL and they won the championship in the early '80s. My parents talk about going to some of those games in those days, but I mean, so like that. It was a big deal. I mean, up till then, I still am a Celtics fan, a Boston Celtics fan, because my dad grew up in Massachusetts.
Okay.
So he grew up in Massachusetts, and then my parents, raised my sister-in-law in Oklahoma, so where my mom was from, and basically lived her whole life aside from college.
Okay. Gotcha.
But anyway, but yeah, so I always associate with the New England sports teams because those are the ones he rooted for,
Mhm.
and he had no other professional franchise that was
Yeah, there in
I mean,
Oklahoma.
we
for
had
you to-
minor league soccer or not minor league baseball and hockey,
Okay.
and we went to some of those games.
Yeah.
But it's it's not the same level of play.
Mm.
It's not the it was big local media thing when the Tulsa Oilers, the hockey team, won the league or whatever, and we ended up in the parade and all that. They had one of those parades. There's just a bunch of people driving around.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, it was spring break or something like that, or we were out of school that day, so it was an excuse to do that, and it was great. But I mean, you don't get the same. If you win the NHL, the Stanley Cup playoffs, you hear about it on different.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be a thing, but like nobody cares about the CHL. I mean, in those days.
Not the
but-
same respect.
But
no.
I mean, it was the closest thing we ever had.
Yeah.
That was celebrating a championship to us, and
Absolutely.
that was all right. I mean, but
Absolutely.
but still, major league teams were always basically New England. I rooted for the Braves in the '90s because they were an exciting team,
Yeah. Okay.
and they were a National League team, and they were it was a good team. Friends of mine were into this is how it was in those days. But I mean, I was still a Red Sox fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it really goes to show like those connections you have. If you have a parent or a guardian, whoever that, was a fan of a specific team, how that does translate down to who you cheer for. I always thought it was strange. I have a lot of friends that lived over by Green Bay, but they're actually all Minnesota Vikings fans, and it's all because their parents grew up in Minnesota.
Right.
And that's that's where their allegiance was. That's where their connections were from. So it just made sense. But I was left because they lived 30 minutes from Lambeau Field, which was crazy to me.
That would be pretty awesome. It's a thing. That's another thing about Oklahoma. We got college football is real big there. College sports in general are pretty big there. But but it's just different. I mean. Especially now, I guess with football, you could still have a pretty decent team of a lot of the same guys for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's so different from the way things even used to be for college, where you get to college basketball, there's so many guys one and done now. It's hard for me to even follow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I know, and it makes me upset that they got rid of that. The whole rule where players could just jump straight from high school to the pros, right? Because you like you just said, it's really impacting the college game now to a really large degree. Where just if a player already knows they want to go play NBA, then let them go try to make their money.
Right.
If they think that they're capable of doing that, by all means, go do that. Let another kid get that scholarship then. Go to that school who's going to be able to be there for a couple of years, because we all know the percentages of kids who make it to D1 college is only like 1% of all high school athletes per sport, and then only 1% of those college athletes are going to make it pro. So I'm not saying it's not the athlete's fault at all. That is not at all by any means their fault. This is completely a policy issue that got put in place here. That's kind of stopping things from happening, so to speak.
Yeah. And I think the NBA, they're going to probably change that rule.
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately, there's no reason why you shouldn't just be able to come right out of high school and play, and then that would solve a lot of those problems. I think you'd still probably have people coming out after a couple of years.
Oh, yeah.
And more that would come out after 3, but if they're allowed to go straight in, most of them, probably will, and maybe that'll give college basketball a little bit more cohesion. It's not like there's not great players, but it just feels so different to me than the way it used to be when I was a kid.
Oh,
and
yeah.
kids would play until, I still feel like Chris Webber kind of messed the whole thing up because, he left after a sophomore season, and if they'd stuck around for a third year, surely they would have won a championship.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think you could say that. You look at some of those teams at Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky. Some of those teams that they had, the talent that's come through those schools. If they, like you said, if they'd stayed a few more years, you'd see a lot of national championships, I think, going to some of those teams. But I mean, it's the player's decision, I guess, in the end. Right? I mean, it's what they want to do, and
Pretty much, and
it's the system that they have to play in. So
yeah, it's. I mean, they're doing the best they can with the situation. It's just I would hope that one day that in the not too distant future, and all of this stuff with college sports right now is so iffy anyway. So
Yeah.
but I think they'll figure out a better plan for that.
absolutely. So looking at the NBA playoffs, I'm curious, who do you legitimately see in the finals, possibly winning it all?
It's hard to say because you'd want to pick the Lakers and the Bucks just because they're both number one seeds. But I almost, to some degree, you got to throw the seeding out of the book because that's a regular season that was completely disjointed, and they don't have, like we were talking about before, there's no home court advantage really.
Yep.
So it's, I mean, I would think that. See, I think that the Lakers are going to run into issue with the Blazers because they're like one of the hottest teams in the league right now, and they've got most of their. They're playing better now than they have all season because they got the right pieces back.
Yeah. No, I totally
They
agree.
got McCollum and Lillard, and those guys are ridiculous. So it's hard to say. I mean, maybe the Clippers because they've got Kawhi Leonard, and there's. I think that the Raptors and the Celtics both have a chance at least getting to the finals, along with Milwaukee, and you could maybe even throw another team in there, but I mean, on the west side, a lot of people, Denver had a really good year, but I mean,
Unless they can get Barton and Gary Harris back, I mean, those are two pieces that absolutely I think need to be there. If they're not there, then you know what? This is a really good experience year for Denver. And then these next few years are scary as all get up to me if I'm an NBA fan in the West because what Michael Porter Jr. has been doing, what the small flashes of Bol Bol has done.
yeah.
I mean, both those two. I mean, you look at, they started the tallest lineup, like average height lineup of all time in the NBA. I mean, it was Bol, Michael Porter Jr. So let's see, Bol like 7'2", Michael Porter Jr. 6'10", Jokic 7 foot, Jeremy Grant 6'9", 6'10", and then I don't remember who their last starter was in that lineup. But regardless, I mean, you're basically starting five dudes that are going to be right around 6'10" or taller.
Yeah, and that's pretty rare in this league now because they're
Yeah.
going smaller and they're trying to get those quick threes, and they're like, you see so much of this. I just watched that Houston Oklahoma City game. And Houston just drive and kick and move the ball around, and it was killing the Thunder. And that's, you see that part of the game. I mean, there's a lot of talk that you can't quite do it that well in the playoffs, and we'll see. Because again, this whole experience this year is going to be different from any other year in the past. So we're going to see some slightly weird stats. I think the shooting might actually, at least early on, it looks like it's really good for some teams.
Yeah.
And I've heard them talk about it being a real shooters venues that they have there because they don't have all the people running around to distract them so much.
Well, I know it's a lot of the really good shooters. I mean, like the Kyle Korvers. Let's see. Well, Klay Thompson isn't there, but I'm trying to think of some of the other really good. Devin Booker was another one who commented on it about how it really just reminds them of their practice facility and where they train a lot of the time, and there's something to be said about I think also taking the crowd out for some of those shooters, it takes some of that pressure off. I mean, it literally almost might feel just like practice in some situations,
Yeah, I remember Ray Allen used to always talk about his favorite thing was going into an opposing team's venue and just making the fans that they all just want to boo you because you played so well.
Yeah.
And you just hit so many of those cold-blooded three-point shots. But, I think that for most of those guys, there's a higher level of focus when there's not it's not like that for everybody though. Like Tuukka Rask of the Boston Bruins left the team to go be with his family after I think the second game of the series, they were playing against Carolina. It was tied 1-1 at the time. They lost a game, and the night before, or whatever, he said that he just didn't really feel the atmosphere was as much fun in the playoffs without the fans, and that's a reasonable thing to say. And then to just leave the next day, it opens up questions. But he's not here to answer them, and I'm not going to bug him about it, because if he went home to be with his family, I assume it means he doesn't want a bunch of media people out there. And
Absolutely. I mean, I think I think there's a lot of players, because I know Mike Conley for the Utah Jazz, he left the bubble because he had his, I think it was his firstborn son was just being born back in like Cincinnati or Cleveland, and he left. I mean, they're a playoff team, but I mean, at the same time, I think this COVID situation has definitely changed perspective on life a little bit for everyone. So I mean, I can totally understand. I mean, family, if that's what's really important to you, and in the time that we're in, I'm not gonna be mad at a player for choosing that in that situation.
no, and I don't blame any of the NFL players that have decided to opt out of the season. It's like it's their, especially concerning the NFL, because they're still planning on doing that. I mean, there's no way you could put the NFL in a bubble.
No.
Because there's way too much personnel. And then, I mean, what are they going to do? Stagger the games over like 5 nights or something like that?
Right.
Because how many football fields do you have in one spot where you could really do that? But ultimately, it just comes down to the personnel, because you're talking about hundreds of people per team.
Yeah.
Because you got 53 on the active roster, and then you got the guys that play on the practice roster, and then you got coaches, and there's not another league with more coaches than the NFL per team.
No.
I mean, it's kind of outrageous how many coordinators and assistants.
Then you add in the training staff, team doctors, physical therapists,
Absolutely.
massage, chiropractors, all of this. 'Cause, I mean, the other thing that's different with the NFL compared to the NBA and some other sports is the amount of recovery time that's needed in between those games. I mean, you see it during the regular season when teams have to go that Sunday to Thursday night game. I mean, it's just shown, there's a higher chance of injuries. There's more issues. Players aren't performing the same because they don't have the same amount of time to recover. And like I said, trying to logistically figure out how to stagger those games. One, for player safety, performance, which is going to lead to entertainment, which, let's be honest, that's what pro sports is. It's an entertainment business to a degree. I mean, and it would just be a nightmare. It really would.
It would be. It could be. I mean, just getting them all into a bubble would be tough enough, And then again, it's like, where are you going to house all those people? You'd have to do it on a coastline or something, and then they start putting people on cruise ships, and that's like
No, seriously. I mean, the NBA is really about the only league that the bubble is plausible, right?
Well, they're working it in the NHL too, but they've got 2 bubbles, and they're both in Canada, which isn't experiencing near the same issues we are in America, at least on a per capita, I believe. I could be wrong about that, so I don't want to be absolute on that. But it just seems like they're having a little easier go of it than we are here.
Yeah.
But I don't subscribe to very much Canadian media as a general rule, so they could be, I don't know.
Very true. Yeah, and I can't speak to that either by any means.
Well, you used to live in Wisconsin, but and that's close to Canada. But
I've been, I've been up there a few times, and I've been up by the border quite a bit. I've studied Canadian healthcare some, but I mean that's about the extent of my knowledge. I can't say that I would be anywhere near an expert level to speak to how they have been impacted in this situation. But I think it was a smart move on the NHL's part just to go up there for their league.
Yeah, I mean, even though there's more American teams than there are Canadian, and it's always been that way, at least in the NHL. I mean, it's like, I think the most they've ever had was 1/3 of the teams.
Yeah.
And then that's slowly gotten a little smaller, and I think they moved Atlanta, I think, to Winnipeg. So they try to, but it's still their sport. I mean, it's still like, that's their national pastime. Like here, it's allegedly baseball, although I would make a point that really football and basketball are taking more precedent than baseball in at least the last 10, 15, 20 years. And baseball still has it definitely has a part of definitely a lot of America part of it, but it's just not. It doesn't hold the same popularity that it used to, despite the fact that players are still making serious bank.
Oh yeah, and it's just I think it goes back to there's so much nostalgia tied to baseball, right? It's like it's that
Well,
classic.
they got 100-year-old, they get records that are over 100 years old that will never be taught because of the dead ball era and the fact that guys hit more doubles and triples in those days than they ever could now.
Yeah.
But it's just different. But it's all it's all just fun stuff to do. For most people, either like who are physically able to actually play sports, and then others to just sit around and watch them and analyze them. And they've got a whole game in that in fantasy sports. I don't get into that personally so much, but I mean, I just like the game for the game.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I've done some fantasy. I like fantasy soccer actually a lot, but fantasy football, I'm over it. I hate the funnest part is drafting players, and then after that I don't care. I just give up because I'm like, in the end, all I care about is my team winning. And if there's another player on my team who's playing my team, I'm like, I want you to do bad, because I care more about my team winning than me getting 20 points from this dude doing 4 catches and 100 yards for 2 touchdowns or whatever it may be, right? Like, I've given up on the fantasy life for the most part on that end.
All right, I think one more thing I want to talk about in sports, they have what I consider to be healthy rivalries. How do you think that, we could take that and bring it more to just life in general?
Yeah. That's really interesting point, because it's something that is so ingrained in sports, not even just at the professional level, but I've experienced it in all my levels of coaching, from college level down through. I've coached as young as U10 girls soccer, and I can tell you rivalries exist there even. And
in different schools, or
in schools, but also in clubs. So the club that I coached for, there were other clubs in our area, and the girls that I've coached, the boys I've coached, it's still the same mindset. They have their one club. They're like, this is the team we always battle with. We always have great games with. It's back and forth. So even when I was in high school, we had our schools that when it came to playoff times, it was always this one team. That's who we knew that was our goal. We have to get past them. That's who we had to be in. How that can translate, over into the regular life, it's a real motivating factor, right? But it's also a dangerous game, rivalry, especially, I think maybe more in the United States with our capitalistic setup, because it can get to a dangerous level of whether it's rivalry or you literally, I hate using the word hatred for someone who's doing better than you, right?
right.
So it's finding that middle level in real life versus the sports life is very difficult, I think. But it is such a healthy rivalry, I think, is such a good thing, and people should look for rivalry in a good way. I think businesses should try to build a culture of some type of rivalry, and you see it. Look at Uber, Lyft, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the first example that I just thought of there. Or you can look at burger chains, whatever. The rivalries are there.
Apple
for sure.
and Microsoft.
Yeah, exactly. And then it drives innovation. It drives so much for companies and whomever to develop the latest and greatest, which is what is so cool about it, I think.
Yeah, I tend to agree that if as long as it's healthy and everybody's growing as a result, then that's the good part about it. I just wish we could translate that to politics, but I really don't want to get into that.
No, I hear you. Well, and I guess my question for you on it would be, so at what point do you think rivalries, whether it's sports or in regular life, don't have to apply politics here, but at what point do you think that line gets crossed where it's not healthy. Like, can you think? I'm trying to just think of some
I mean,
examples
normally
where it
I would
goes
say
too far.
that the line is generally violence. Like,
Yeah.
I think that like in the Red Sox and Yankees rivalry,
Mm-hmm.
there have been instances. Now, I mean, back in the, even recently, and been back in the day, like the teams would brawl, like literally.
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes players would get injured.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the line is crossed in the sporting realm.
Yes.
Now, in business, I mean, probably that's when you're talking about stealing stealing like, intellectual property and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you might get, that's where that might get out of line. And anytime there's violence where people get hurt, injured, or, even fans, like,
Mm-hmm.
there have been instances with the Giants and the Dodgers and the Red Sox and the Yankees, and this is just a baseball, where fans were, like, severely hurt and I think in some instances killed.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go to Europe and soccer and the
Oh.
hooliganism. I mean, that's like a whole other level of it.
Well, I mean, because I know you're a Liverpool fan.
Yeah.
I mean, Liverpool has their. I mean, I know this wasn't maybe necessarily because of a rivalry, but the awful events that transpired for Liverpool. I mean, how many was it? 90 some dead.
The 96 of Hillsborough.
Yes, 96 of Hillsborough.
Yeah, and
that's
that
what
was,
it was.
and that really was more like, at least in modern times, looked as a failure of a police
Yes.
department to like properly to get the people in the game safely.
Yes.
And do it in a they tried to do it too quickly, and they had a lot of issues. It was basically just organizational fault, and then they spent 30 years trying to blame it on the drunk fans allegedly,
Exactly.
and that turned out to not really be the case.
But I mean, I know Liverpool
But-
and Everton fans have had their share of
Yeah, and-
incidences.
Yes, and the interesting thing about that is you got like brothers and sisters or whatever that are on different sides of that for whatever reason they chose their own team,
Mhm.
and it's, I mean, that's like the Civil War in some ways. But I think in more recent years, I think after Hillsborough, that happened in 1989. And what happened before that, what transpired in '85 when Liverpool played, I can't remember if it was Juventus or Roma. I think it may have been Juventus for what would have been the European Cup final. And there were a bunch of people that were killed in the match, and that was just like fighting and that sort of thing.
Jeez.
Yeah, and the Liverpool got banned for about 5 years from European play because of that, and that kind of led to the demise of Liverpool. And only now they're finally back up on the perch, so to speak, winning the Champions League and Premier League in successive seasons. I think that should pretty much. I think now we can finally move on from all that other stuff that happened in the past, but
Mhm.
and in soccer in general, they've really made a crackdown on hooliganism over the last 20 or 30 years, and it's made a difference.
Oh, I 100% agree. I mean, I think you look at, to me, the World Cup especially is such a uniting event for countries. I mean, it's really amazing. And I feel like I first realized this in 2010 when it was the South African World Cup, and that was the first time because I was finally at the age where I could realize that, where I could see, wow, there are some major issues going on at a societal, political level in some of these countries. But the World Cup started, and I'm not saying that it's a good thing, that they maybe turned back on it and didn't address some of these issues, but the countries themselves were to some degree able to unite and like have this experience away from that trauma that was going on, right?
Yeah.
And there's something special about that.
No, that makes it's funny you mentioned 2010 because that was the first year I really paid attention to the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually in Japan when it happened in 2002, but I was in the Navy at that point, and I think I may have had an opportunity to go to a game if I got through NWR or whatever, and if I was thinking about it, I would have. But we were so busy with work in those days that I barely got any time off. So it was just it's hard to do all the stuff I wanted to. But I got to do plenty in Japan, so it's all right. But it was I was young. But anyway, 2010, and you really see like something I noticed in the last 3 World Cups is you'll see people sitting beside one another rooting for the opposite country, but like there's still a camaraderie there. And,
Oh yeah.
Sometimes you don't see during the World Cup, you don't generally see violence, at least not since I've really been paying attention to
Yeah.
it. And I think that's just because that's not what they're out there to do. They're out there to have a good time, support their country, and if you're going out to the World Cup, you're going to be meeting people from all over the world. And that was something when I was out there, I did see a lot more, people from, foreigners to Japan, so to speak. And it was very interesting. I mean, it was just basically a higher percentage of drunk Europeans, but it wasn't all like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Besides, usually when I was out in Tokyo, it was late night anyway. So, I mean, that's just how it was.
Yeah, I imagine that city doesn't sleep very much. I mean, it seems like one that's just constantly going, especially, I mean, if you add in the fact that there's a World Cup going on there.
That's the only place where I could ever fall asleep at a bar and nobody'd ever say a word to you. I mean, not every bar necessarily, but I mean...
There are many that are going to let that one go.
But I mean, they were more tolerant to just people as long as they weren't doing anything bad to anybody. You know, it was like, well, you're being, you're keeping to yourself, you're being, nonviolent and, just not having a bad attitude. It's, if you spend money, it's all good. You know?
Yeah.
That's usually how it works in the world, but I mean, it's not that easy for everybody, but
No.
it's, I think that we can come together and make the world a better place somehow or another, and I really think sports does that.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I spent let's see what year would that have been. Let's see, because our last, 2010, so it would have been, 2014, 2018 was the other World Cup. Yeah, because 2022 is our next World Cup.
Right.
So I think it would have been the 2018 Cup. I was in England for one of them.
Well, that's cool.
And that was, I mean, I was in college when that one was going. I'm trying to remember. That would have had to have been...
Probably 2014.
It was 2014.
And that's when they were playing in Brazil. That was a good World Cup.
Yep. And that was such an experience. I mean, it is just being in England around any type of soccer, football for you true natives across the pond. It truly is a different lifestyle and experience over there. It's life.
Yeah, it really is life to them. It's funny you mentioned that. I saw a Liverpool game in St. Louis about 4 years ago when they were doing their North American tour that year.
Yeah.
And I got to meet a bunch of people that were just from Liverpool that were also making the trip. And this one guy showed me a picture of him standing in front of the European Cup from 1977 when he was like 7 years old or whatever. And I'm like, that must have been the most amazing experience of his life. And he's still showing it to people on his phone, almost 30 years later or whatever. And it was more than 30 years, almost 40 years. And I sat next to a guy, an older gentleman, and he was telling me about the 60s and the 70s, and I'm just like, I just big grin, just like this is the most amazing experience of my life, watching Liverpool play on a baseball field against Roma.
Can't imagine, let alone,
It was very amazing, and just meeting all the people was really the best part, and that's exactly, the English take soccer probably more seriously than we do any sport.
Oh, I 100% agree.
I don't quite understand why. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's because politics is turning into the sport of Americans or whatever, but the problem is no one knows how to play.
Yeah.
You're spot on with that. I 100% agree with that. But yeah, it's I mean,
the coaches are horrible and they all need to get fired.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because
It's like every team.
it's you want that instant result
every
right?
year.
You want that instant result. Why can't we can hire this coach, we can sign this player. Why aren't things turning around? I mean, it's no. But yes, I mean the American or the English love for soccer is it's honestly just amazing. I mean, I'm starting to see some of that same love for soccer over here. Finally, U.S. soccer scene is developing really well. We're starting to get a lot of really good players who are playing internationally as well as domestically. I mean, by all means, it's good to have those players here in America too, playing on these MLS teams.
But obviously Pulisic, the biggest name right now for the U.S. playing overseas. But
Yeah, I hope he recovers from his injury from the FA Cup Finals. That was
Yeah.
tough to watch.
Yeah.
that was rough. But
you got Weah playing with PSG still. You have
there was
Couple-
a guy that scored.
Weston McKennie playing over in the Bundesliga.
Was it Tyler Johnson? I should have looked this up. It was a player for the U.S. that scored in the Champions League. I can't even remember for what team. And it may have been. I can't remember. But he scored the first goal in a knockout stage as an American.
Really?
Yeah, this just happened within the last 2 or 3 week since the Champions League has been back.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all playing in Lisbon for the most part, but
Mhm.
there was an American. I wish I could remember what team. It may have been Leipzig, but because I
Yeah.
know they have a lot of young players. But it could have also been somebody for maybe Lyon. No, surely not. I can't remember. I really should look that up. But I mean, that's progress, and the only way the Americans are ever really going to be serious contenders in a World Cup is if we have. I have to say at least six of the starting 11 have to be, like maybe not full-time players for European clubs, but
Contributors.
serious contributors. I mean, I think
Agreed.
I definitely feel like Fusilic he's a starter now for Chelsea, and that's huge
Yes.
because Chelsea's one of the big six in England. So
Yes.
I don't know
Agreed.
the way Arsenal's going, they might want to start calling it Big Five. I don't know, but I mean.
Well, I gotta ask you too. So, as a Liverpool fan, were you upset that Liverpool didn't pursue Christian a little harder when that transfer market was kind of rolling?
Well, I was kind of surprised because for like 2 years I'd read about how much Jurgen Klopp was interested in getting him, and he'd been in the Bundesliga and all that. And
They had the connection at Dortmund too.
right, and they had that connection. So there was for 2 years, like I said, I read about he might come and play for the Reds, and then it just I don't know if Chelsea swooped in and spent more money, or because toward the end I think some of it just has to do with the fact that Liverpool got that front three, Mane,
Yeah.
Firmino, and Salah, and breaking those guys up. It's not.
It makes
they
sense.
played so well together for the last 3 seasons,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
only way he was
really
going to
last-
contribute
last
was
4
off the
now,
bench
yes,
at that
but-
point, right?
Exactly. He would have, and I think with Chelsea, because like they ended up getting him before they got hit with that transfer ban.
Yep.
And so they weren't signing a whole bunch of other players. So they had him, and he's, when he's healthy, he contributes as well as just about anybody.
Oh yeah.
He could make a case that he's one of the top 10 attacking players in the Premier League this past season. And I really thought he hit it after the restart. He was one of the few guys that just really.
He was on a tear.
Yeah, and
I mean-
really he was on it's like he got a special stage because of the way they did the restart and everything, and because there was so little going on at that point. And
Yep.
I think he got more eyes on him, and it didn't bother him in the least until he got his, hamstring or whatever pulled or torn or whatever it was in that FA Cup final. But
Yeah.
he'll be back.
He will. I mean,
And he'll
it's a
keep
bright
getting-
spot for U.S.
He'll
soccer.
keep getting. He's still on the upward path, and I think if they get enough young guys or whatever, they get enough experience playing against the top players in the world.
Yes.
Maybe we can get into the quarterfinals.
No, I agree. I mean, I think
But
anyone who's a fan
missing
of
out on that
US
last
soccer-
World Cup was one of the most heartbreaking experiences.
it was flat out embarrassing. I mean,
It was a horrible night. I can remember well.
oh yes.
But I mean, would have been kind of interesting with them in playing in Russia too. But for a whole bunch of reasons. But
Mhm.
there's always 2022, and I can't remember when qualifiers restart. But it's my understanding that the U.S. got like something of a bye round or something, even though they didn't even make the last World Cup. But they have made like 5 out of the last 7 or something like that.
Yeah.
So they've done well. It's just, I mean, in terms of CONCACAF,
Yes.
they just missed out on the last one, and it hurt because I feel like it just kind of was it kind of pushed the momentum back a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and there's so much change and turmoil in not only just the coaching of that specific team, but the entire structure of United States Soccer Federation. There's a lot of issues that were going on there, and I mean, I think that full on trickled down into the U.S.'s play, into player mindset on where this team is heading. I mean, I think there's something to be said that played for sure on, you know, the results that came for that team heading towards that World Cup.
Yeah.
But
I mean, they probably wouldn't have done that well anyway.
no, I agree, but I
especially
mean,
in that. Well, although I don't know, because the 2018 World Cup did have like just moments of utter, just randomness. I feel like just strange things that happened. I mean, Croatia ended up in the final. Nobody called that.
best midfield I've seen play in a long time.
Well, when you got the best, you know, you got a midfielder from Real Madrid and a midfielder from Barcelona, it's probably going to be a pretty good midfield.
They're special. They were fun to watch.
I think Luka Modric ended up winning he won. I don't know if he won the Ballon d'Or, but
I thought he did.
Maybe he did.
I think he did win it that year, actually, which was obviously a shock considering, I mean, it's basically just been a 2-horse race for just about, I don't know, what'd you say?
The last decade, basically.
Yeah, basically the last decade with, I mean, honestly, no, not even. I feel so bad for, like, guys like Robert Lewandowski, who, I mean, the dude's been a goal-scoring machine, but
he scores 40 goals or more every year.
Every year.
And he's about as consistent as they come, and yeah, he's still like
sits behind.
He's the third, he's still like the third best player in the last 5 years
because of Messi and Ronaldo.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a lot of up and comers, and that's what makes soccer so exciting to me. Is because they put 11 guys on the field, so there's a lot of chances for a lot of guys to become big, but some do and some don't.
Absolutely.
All right. I think we just about covered everything that we need to, unless there's anything specifically that you wanted to talk about.
I'm not. I mean, I thought we covered a lot of really great stuff here.
I think we did.
Absolutely. No, besides that, I mean, I am good here.
All right. Well, this has been Deep Americano with Josh, myself, and Austin doing this great interview, and I really enjoyed this conversation.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me on. Always here to talk, especially Premier League. Definitely going to give you a lot of crap for being a Liverpool fan because it just comes with the territory, right?
Newcastle, it's all right. It's Kenny Dalglish left. He there were a lot of great players that played for both teams.
Yes.
Over the years, so it's a rivalry, but it's a camaraderie as far as I'm concerned.
100% agree. The healthy rivalry, right?
Yeah, absolutely, the healthy rivalry. That's a good way to end this. Well, thanks a lot for listening, guys, and have a great day.
And that's a wrap for Josh and Austin. Thank you for joining us for Deep America.